Hello, my name's Sean Maffett. Welcome to the best of British Millennium Airshows. The first big show of the season was in Suffolk. Mildenhall's Air Fate 2000 is far and away the biggest US show in Britain. It got off to a rather bad start with driving rain and hail. But nothing daunted, the US Air Force managed to bring together bombers that span the past 60 years, from Berlin to Bosnia. We talked to one of the B-2 pilots, who we can't name for security reasons.
It's quite amazing. It really is. The technology is just unbelievable. It's actually, though, quite easy from a piloting perspective. The computers do all the work. Move the stick left, the airplane goes left. Not really worried about the magic going on behind me. Is a pilot's dream to fly. It really is. And the entire trailing edge of the airplane is articulated. All the surfaces move except for the exhaust pipes, which are, of course, right behind the engines. And the computers, the flight control computers, move them as required to make the airplane go where it needs to go. For yaw stability, which is traditionally what a tail on the airplane would provide, there's clamshells out on the wingtips, and they open differentially, and that provides the yaw control for the airplane.
Each year, Mildenhall's 100th Air Refuelling Wing delivers 11 million gallons of fuel to US Air Forces in Europe. On this mission, our B-2 pilot talks us through the refueling process.
What we're going to see today up here in the tanker is one of the hardest things we do from a piloting perspective. Refueling's the toughest thing. Landing is very easy, delivering the weapons is very easy, and just flying around is very easy.
It's a large aircraft, and with the typical of all large airplanes, when refueling, it pushes a pretty good air wave out in front of the bow. And what that does, as it closes in, it tends to push our airplane, wants to push it tail down. And so we have to be real careful monitoring the trim and the pitch changes of our aircraft.
For starters, you're maneuvering two very large airplanes very close together. That in and of itself is inherently the biggest danger, is obviously you don't want to hit each other. So your closure rates and getting together is a very slow, controlled process. In fact, that probably takes the longest of the entire exercise to accomplish. Once we get in close, the refueling receptacle on the bomber is very far aft, very far back. So the windows that the pilots have to look out of in the cockpit end up being very far underneath the tanker. Our view out the front is very limited.
What I do is I establish visual with the receiver. Once he gets within a half mile, I take over radio communications with him, get a radio check with him. He follows a row of lights on our belly of our aircraft, which I'm operating, which I can use for visual signals. Also, I'm flying the boom, lining it up with his receptacle. And once he gets close enough, approximately 2 to 3 feet away, I link the two aircraft together. A signal is sent from us into the receiver, and he sends it back, establishing a good contact. Once that's established, we effectively just pump gas from us into him.
From about 100 feet out all the way in until we're actually on the boom, and then staying on the boom. It's all stick and rudder skills in the pilot.
And after the B-2, an F-15 drops by.
F-15s, yeah, fighters are very easy, small aircraft. We hardly even can tell they're back there when they're coming in and out for refueling. They fly at higher air speeds, and the rest are more controllable.
And the next time you fill up with petrol, you might like to consider that the fuel transferred to this F-15 in 1 minute would run your car for a whole year. The Swedish Air Force's C-130 Hercules flew a typical, very tight display at the show. Hercules has been in production since 1954. More than 2,000 of them have been supplied to operators in 55 different countries. The aeroplane's flown today by Captain Göran Westhead of the Swedish Air Force, and he demonstrates how durable and rugged the aeroplane is, with its ability to land and stop in the minimum amount of runway. And there's the reverse pitch going in on those big Rolls-Royce Allison engines. And we can see First Lieutenant Bo Gustafsson, one of the loadmasters there, waving to the crowd. Now here's a complete change the extra 300 aerobatic aircraft of the Royal Jordanian Falcons. The pilots are all military fighter pilots, and they're flying these aeroplanes that are actually provided by the National Jordanian Airline. They fly at air shows round the world, and brilliantly they do it too. And it's back to the warbirds now. Ray Hanna flying his P-51D Mustang, one of the Breitling fighters, all with their distinctive yellow noses. And the evening sky has cleared for this warbird part of the air display. Mustang is accompanied by the P-40 Kitty Hawk and the Corsair. These dramatic old warbirds are some of the aeroplanes that are owned by the Old Flying Machine Company. And that's one of the privately owned groups that acquires and restores aircraft, and has been doing so since 1983. As ever, the Royal Air Force Red Arrows, the aerobatic team, managed to find a gap in the weather. The immaculate Red Arrows finishing their first show under the command of their new leader, Squadron Leader Andy Offer. We'll see more of them later.
Take it higher.
Now, it's not often you can call an air show unique, but Sea Wings 2000 certainly was. There's never been such a gathering of seaplanes and amphibians in one show in Britain before. And running a show like this brings its own unique problems. For instance, your display airfield is very wet and it goes up and down with the tide. And then there's safety, paramount at all air shows, but here you have to keep all those boats clear of the aeroplanes. Well, the first seaplane in the show was the Royal Gull. Now this was Italian style at its best, built by Rinaldo Piaggio in Genoa in Italy. It was first seen in public at the 1949 Paris Air Show, because this aircraft is an amphibian, it has wheels as well. It became the OK aeroplane for the very rich, a sort of go-anywhere runabout. King Farouk and Aristotle Onassis were just two of the owners. Its propellers face backwards, fairly unusually in most aeroplanes, two Lycoming propeller-driven piston engines there. It belongs to John and Lynn Moore of Vadnais Heights in Minnesota. They'd had it flown across the Atlantic by Jack Schillinger. He'd come via Canada, Greenland and Iceland, specially for the Sea Wings show. During the show, it was flown by Dave Bardot. He says it handles beautifully, especially when it's actually on the water. The Italian Air Force, the Aeronauti Militare, actually used these aircraft for search and rescue until 1961. Now here's a very strange-looking little aeroplane, the Republic Twin B, and demonstrating that it is an amphibian. It can be on the land or the water. Very versatile little aircraft made by the Stoll Aircraft Corporation of Massachusetts and developed from the Republic CB, which had one engine with a pusher propeller at the back. These are two Lycomings with propellers in the usual place. There's that rather strange layout with the cabin at the front and the long boom behind leading to the tail. Belongs to Jean-Jacques Lurcher, who's here with his family. He's brought it over from Switzerland, and it's based in Reichenbach near Interlaken, and he keeps it just for fun. His day job is being an orthopedic surgeon, but he says he can start by 7 o'clock, and by 5 o'clock in the evening he can be in Sweden on a lake for camping and fishing. And there he is, going back home to Switzerland after a long takeoff run. Now, you might have thought, watching the Gull landing, that he was having a bit of porpoising. Now, this is real porpoising. Helmut Meyer, flying the Lake LA-250 Renegade, is having a lot of trouble with a crosswind here that's trying to take him onto the beach. Quite an exciting moment all round. And there were quite a lot of people there who thought that this aircraft was actually not going to complete its takeoff and was possibly going to nose into the water. But finally, Helmut manages to stop it being a boat. Well, hang on, one more bounce. But he does eventually get it into the air for its flying display. It's a sporting, utility type of aircraft, is the Renegade, built by Lake in 1960. It has a single pusher engine, propeller at the back again, mounted very high to keep it well clear of the water, as you can see. And a much smoother landing than takeoff. But as the speed drops off, the aircraft really does sink quite low in the water. So you kind of feel when you're sitting in it that you're really going to get wet. Now, Bill De Silva is probably a man much envied by most people at the show. He owns the Albatross.
This is a 1955 Grumman Albatross, built in Bethpage, New York by Grumman Corporation. It was sold to the Navy in 1955, and it was a search and rescue aircraft for its entire naval career, and it spent all of it in the Pacific. And it was retired 1967 from the Korean conflict. It was put in storage in Tucson at Davis-Monthan. And it was there until I purchased it in 1994. The aircraft had no engines, no propellers, no gear, none of the instrument panel was in it, and none of the control surfaces. It was, however, preserved well enough that the airframe was in very good condition, and the pieces that were missing were readily available. It took about 1.5 years to get it to about this state, and my family and I and several friends have worked on it and got it to look like it is now. It's one of the fastest aircraft that the U.S. Navy ever built that's propeller-driven, piston-driven. It cruises at 180 knots, and it has a top speed of 220 knots. I've been into seaplanes and floatplanes for a long time, and the passion truly is to go fishing and camping and exploring. If you can buy a ticket to go fishing somewhere, that's not where I want to go. And so this place takes you to the Arctic, the Alaskan Arctic and the Canadian Arctic, two lakes that aren't even numbered, much less named. And we'll land there and camp and fish. The only important thing to the aircraft when you're landing is its pitch attitude. If the pitch attitude and the rate of descent are correct, then the airspeed and the power setting you're using must be correct. So the most important thing about it is to touch down at the correct nose attitude. And then when it touches down on the water, of course, it's riding on the keel, and the outboard floats, the tip floats, are not touching the water, and you don't want them to touch the water at those. It touches down at around 75, 80 knots. And they're not designed to ride on the water at those speeds. So once it sinks to the water and becomes more of a boat, then you allow the floats to touch the water. And for takeoff, the the aircraft has to transition up onto the step, which is this forward part of the hull. And once it's on that step, then you hold the wings level and accelerate to the proper speed depending on your weight and lift it off the water. The takeoff is not nearly so difficult as the landing. The aircraft requires twice the maintenance. It's the maintenance of an old aircraft and the maintenance of an old boat. So the guy that owns one of these is either very wealthy and has 3 or 4 mechanics around all the time, or is half nuts. I don't know which one it is. I don't have 3 or 4 mechanics around. The kind of types of seaplanes that I like is anything built before the 60s. The big flying boats, they were like ships. And it was a very romantic type of flying that no longer applies today. As you all know, if you've ever gotten on an airliner, the only romance is when you get off. So those days are gone, and every once in a while, someone like the city of Southampton will celebrate that period. And that's one of the reasons I'm here. It's, if there's any way I can celebrate or help to bring that back even for a little bit, it's all worthwhile.
Well, they may be maverick, eccentric, but very can-do people, seaplane pilots. And how lucky we are that people like Bill De Silva are happy to bring their wonderful aeroplanes across the Atlantic to display before us at Southampton. Well, Sea Wings is not exclusively about seaplanes, because here is a unique formation of aircraft. These two types have never been seen flying together, the Hawker Hurricane and the English Electric Canberra. More about why they're doing that in a moment, but just enjoy the sight and the sound. The English Electric Canberra, the first jet bomber to enter service with the Royal Air Force. And this particular aircraft was a world record holder. In August 1957, it flew up to 70,310 feet, getting the world altitude record for Great Britain. It did it just off the Isle of Wight. The Canberra saw active service in the Far East and also, probably more notably, at Suez. And there's the big bomb bay open, showing the weapons carrying capacity of this jet bomber. It took something like 2 years of hard work to rebuild this historic aircraft, and it was rescued from the scrapman's torch at Farnborough in 1995. The Hawker Hurricane, more famous perhaps than the Canberra, always slightly overshadowed in the Battle of Britain by the more glamorous Spitfire, but the Hurricane actually achieved more enemy kills than did the Spitfire. Now, there's a particular reason for the Hurricane being at Southampton. In August 1940, Flight Lieutenant James Nicholson was on patrol over Southampton water in his Hurricane. He was ambushed by a flight of marauding Messerschmitt 109s. He was severely wounded and his aeroplane badly damaged, on fire in fact. He was about to bail out when he saw another Messerschmitt ahead, and abandoning all thoughts of his own safety, Nicholson began to attack the German aircraft. His aircraft, as I say, was on fire, and he was eventually forced by the intense heat to bail out. He landed on the outskirts of Southampton. He was rushed to hospital, where doctors gave him just 24 hours to live. But despite his injuries, he survived, and he returned to active service. And in November 1940, he was awarded the Victoria Cross. He was, in fact, the only pilot in fighter command to achieve that honour in the whole of World War II. This actual aeroplane, this Hurricane, belongs to the fighter collection. It's a Mark 12B, which means that it was built in Canada in 1942, and it served as a coastal defender in Nova Scotia. So why was the Hurricane flying with the Canberra? Well, Flight Lieutenant Nicholson was flying with the RAF's 249 Squadron when he won his VC, and the last type that this squadron flew before they disbanded in 1961 was the Canberra. So this display was a celebration of great personal courage and of one squadron's distinguished history. Now this aeroplane, surprising as it may seem, is actually a contemporary of the Spitfire. It came into service in the year the Spitfire was made, 1936, and it was still serving on active service at the end of the Second World War. It is the Fairy Swordfish, affectionately known as the String Bag. A carrier-borne aeroplane, and it could carry bombs or that single torpedo underneath. It was virtually obsolete when it came into service, but it worked so well. Jane's All the World's Aircraft described it as one of the most versatile aeroplanes under the rigours of modern warfare. On the night of November the 11th, 21 Swordfish were launched against the Italian fleet at Taranto harbour, and they completely destroyed it. They'd pressed on with their task despite heavy anti-aircraft fire, and in fact all but 2 of the Swordfish were able to release their torpedoes. This particular aeroplane, which belongs to the Royal Navy Historic Flight, is the oldest string bag in existence. It's a so-called Blackfish, as it was built by Blackburns at Sherburn and Elmet, and it first flew on Trafalgar Day, the 21st of October, 1941. Well, the finale of Sea Wings 2000 was an amazing flypast. In celebration of the 60th anniversary of the Battle of Britain, they wanted to achieve a flypast of 14 Spitfires. They almost did. In fact, they had 13 Spitfires and 1 Hurricane. The Spitfire, of course, the most famous aircraft in the Battle of Britain. The roots of this classic design go back to 1925. The designer R.J. Mitchell began to evolve a series of high-speed seaplanes for the Schneider Trophy contest, and those planes won that contest outright for Britain in 1931. Mitchell designed from those record-breaking aeroplanes the Spitfire, originally the Supermarine Type 300, designed and built in Southampton. First flew in 1936. Like the Hurricane, powered by the Merlin engine, very distinctive sound. Spitfires ran to more than 22 marks, and more than 22,000 of them were built. Went through extraordinary development during the war. The first one could fly at 340 miles an hour, and it had a 1,000 horsepower, 27-litre engine. The final mark, the F-22, could fly at 450 miles an hour. And from a 27-litre engine, it had become a 37-litre one. And that was the Rolls-Royce Griffon. After the massed formation of Spitfires had left the arena, this lone aircraft returned to fly a poignant tribute to those young men who, during the Battle of Britain, had given their lives in the ultimate service to the nation. This tribute, interestingly, is flown by a woman pilot, Carolyn Grace.
Get higher.
Now, Waddington is the Royal Air Force's big show. It's 2 days long, unlike the RAF's other big public air display, Lucas, which is a one-day event. And amongst all the serious military kit, a bit of circus. The aeroplane is a Piper J3 Cub, and it's sitting on its trailer, which is being pulled by a Kia Sedona people carrier. Martin Carrington is the pilot, and at the given moment, he releases the locks on the wheels and he just gets airborne. Amazing. Now the next question is, can he actually land it back on it again? Well, we have to wait a moment to see while the Kia Sedona turns around and then tries again down the runway. And any minute now, Martin should appear in picture and have a go at landing it. Gosh, it looks a bit dodgy, doesn't it? He has to go at exactly the right speed. He's obviously taking a spot of time doing this. That was his first attempt, and he's almost touched down. No, he hasn't. Oh, he's off again. I think he has to try again. It all looks rather dodgy somehow, doesn't it? Right, he's getting the wheels quite close to the top of that trailer. Oh, he doesn't want to do it this time? Yes, he does. Yes, he's got the wheels on the trailer. He's now holding the aeroplane down on the trailer while the trailer continues to move forward, and then he's just inching up the top of that trailer there until he gets the wheels in exactly the right place, and there the locks come on. And he successfully landed it on that mini wheeled aircraft carrier. Now, fun as that is, safety is absolutely paramount at all air shows, and at every single one, the pilots are always given a thorough briefing before the thing starts. Of course, it includes the layout of the place, and it includes all the safety regulations, the diversion airfields, the weather, everything they need to know to make it a safe air show here at Waddington. I'll hand you over to the Met Man, Ian Simpson, for a brief. Now, Waddington had something that no other British air show had. They had the Thunderbirds, the United States Air Force Air Demonstration Squadron, to give them their full name, and their very exotically painted F-16 fighters. Interesting that they use real fighters. Most aerobatic display teams, like the Red Arrows or the Italian Frecce Tricolori, use trainer aircraft, but the Americans use these big, warlike fighters. They're led by Colonel John Venable. There are 6 of them altogether, and mostly they fly in a formation of 4 with 2 opposition aircraft. There are the first 4 taking off in finger 4 formation. Big Pratt & Whitney turbofans in full reheat as they get off the ground and going straight into a box 4 shape. Very, very tight formation. Wings and fuselages absolutely overlapping. And here are the 2 solo aircraft in a very tight mirror formation, Major Kevin Maston and Major Dean Wright. And watch this for a crossover. And what they call a dirty pass here, dirty signifying that the aircraft has its wheels and flaps down, but it kind of matches the weather. And here they are with all 6 of them back together.
Lieutenant Colonel Venable, roll 360 degrees. Watch as all 5 wingmen maintain their precise formation position.
And as they get closer towards us and you see them in plan formation, you can see once again how very tightly packed they are. Absolutely rock solid. So there it was, the Thunderbirds' one and only UK show at RAF Waddington. And this is the home team. This is number 8 Squadron, and this is the E-3A Sentry, airborne early warning aircraft. Built by Boeing's, based on the old 707. Large aeroplane. But that rotordome on top is what houses the radar antennae. And it goes slowly round when the thing is actually searching out aircraft. Blips below it. so that it can direct fighters onto them. That rotordome is huge. It's 30 feet in diameter. That's the length of not a very big bus. And it's 6 foot thick in the middle. You could actually stand up in it if it was empty. And it goes round once every 10 seconds. The E3A Sentry, a familiar sight over the Lincolnshire skies, and an absolutely essential part of the modern air war. These are the Spanish. This is the Team Águila, the Eagle team, the Spanish national aerobatic team. And these elegant little aeroplanes are Casa 101s, the aviojets, developed by Construcciones Aeronáuticas S.A., Casa for short, and helped by MBB in Germany and Northrop in the United States. First flew in 1977. One of the things they do rather well is take off in a 7-ship formation. This shape is Mirlo, the blackbird from which they break. Bravo. Another of those mirror formations. And an opposite mirror. Now the Spanish national colours. Now this aircraft is the Lancaster bomber. One of only 2 left flying in the world. The other one's in Canada, incidentally, and this one belongs to the Royal Air Force Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. And this year she has a new colour scheme, as QRM of number 61 Squadron, called Mickey the Moocher. And the name is a reference to a big song of the period, which was actually called Minnie the Moocher, and that was sung by Cab Calloway. This aircraft, QRM of 61 Squadron, based at Skellingthorpe in Lincolnshire, was a centenarian. That's to say, she went on more than 100 operations. If you're used to seeing the Lancaster, you might even have noticed that she's slightly less shiny than she used to be. And they have in fact been using a satin paint that approximates more to the real wartime finish of Lancaster bombers. Squadron leader Dave Thomas is flying the Lancaster for us today. Flight Lieutenant Dave Moss is the co-pilot. Squadron leader Paul Wilkins is the navigator. The idling growl of 4 Merlin engines. As with all tailwheel aircraft, quite difficult to steer on the ground. The tailwheel is not actually steerable, so you advance the throttle on the outboard engine to turn the aircraft round, as well as using the rudders. One of the grand old men of British aviation, Sir George Edwards, described the Lancaster as an aircraft designed by engineers and built by craftsmen and women for heroes to fly. Out of the 7,377 Lancasters that were built, no less than 3,349 were lost on operations. Well, although we did see the Thunderbirds on the Saturday of the show, on the Sunday they had to dash off to another show in Montreal, so all we got was their takeoff. Flying Legends is arguably the best warbird show in Europe. And in this 60th anniversary year of the Battle of Britain, there were fighter aces on hand to be driven up and down in front of the crowd and to meet people. The show's hosted by the Fighter Collection, and that's one of the privately owned groups that preserves and flies vintage aircraft at Duxford under the aegis of the Imperial War Museum. Here's an elegant Sea Fury getting airborne, tucking its wheels up slightly asymmetrically, and a French Bearcat. French naval markings. Always that asymmetric look to the wheels. And once airborne, they've got themselves into the cat's formation. A wonderful sight. The Tiger Cat at the front, flown by Pete Kinsey. He's a man who leads a lot of formations at Duxford, very experienced at this sort of work. That's his aircraft at the front, the twin-engine Tiger Cat. Also with him the two Bearcats and that Sea Fury. It's pulling a certain amount of G in the turn here, a flat horizontal turn. You can see the horizon spilling out behind him there, being chased in quite close line astern by one of the Bearcats. As it comes towards us, look how slim the fuselage of the Tiger Cat is, just the width of the pilot. There's the M11 going underneath. There's the runway, off to Pete Kinsey's right as he puts the right wing down. And as he levels up, the glass front of the American Air Museum. Pete Kinsey's head moving around all the time, constantly looking and seeing what's happening around him. And here he is, landing the big Tiger Cat on the runway. I say on the runway because quite a lot of these aircraft here take off and land on the grass, just as they used to in the war. But not these aircraft, because these are big and very heavy and generally prefer to stick to the tarmac. These are AD-4 Sky Raiders. Two of them today, another French aircraft from the Chable stable. That one's flown by Yves Collin. See a little door in the side of the fuselage there. People actually get in and out of that. More of that in a moment. And this is the Fighter Collection AD-4, flown by Stu Goldsmith. Not the most elegant of aircraft these, but immensely practical. A 3,000 horsepower right radial engine. 50-foot wingspan, very big aeroplane, compare that to the Spitfire at 36 foot. A real multi-role aircraft this turned into. They had an airborne early warning version with radome in it. More than 1,000 of them were used in Vietnam for ground combat and also for rescue purposes. They were known as Sandys, their call sign was Sandy. They used to locate pilots who were downed and protect them and direct the rescuing helicopters onto them. Corsairs getting airborne there to fly with the AD-4s. This is another aircraft from France, from the Jacquard collection, flown by Eric Goujon, and the one with the yellow nose from the fighter collection at Duxford, flown by Brian Smith. Corsair with its crank wing, brought into service to relieve the P-40 Kitty Hawk in its very determined struggle against the Japanese Zeros, a struggle that it was losing. Once the Corsair came along, that began to change. It was able to dive through a hail of machine gun bullets and sink a cruiser or a destroyer with a torpedo or bombs. TBM Avenger is next, flown by Dan Griffiths. First flew in 1941, did this aircraft, and its early combat days were disastrous. 5 out of 6 that went on the first raid were destroyed. But it went on to become a very successful torpedo bomber. There was also an anti-submarine warfare version with search radar and all sorts of attack equipment. This particular aircraft served with the United States Navy, actually served at Pearl Harbor, and it was retired from naval service in 1956. It's been owned by Tony Haig Thomas since 1987. Now this is the absolutely immaculate Douglas A-26 Invader. Belongs to Richard Nevo. It's been beautifully restored. Conditions like this, hard to get. Pilot Frank Feste explains the periscopic gun sight.
And the periscope was actually mechanically connected with both the upper and the lower turrets. So wherever you turned the periscope, the guns were pointed. So 2.50s on top and 2.50s below. That was basically his job to make sure that no other aircraft would come in the neighborhood. Basically installed a brand new instrument panel with the basic 6 instruments configured the way that we're used to, and a complete basic 6 on the right hand side as well, with the engine instruments in the middle and modern avionics.
The A-26 was quite a long-lived aircraft. It flew in 3 major wars. It was just in time for the Second World War, it majored in Korea, and it was also very active in Vietnam. This particular aircraft, built in 1945 and used as a trainer in the United States, and then it was loaned to the French Air Force. After that it went on to the Civil Register in the States, and Richard Nevo bought it in 1995, and it then underwent 3 years of restoration. Finally it was ready to be ferried to the Netherlands, but en route they stopped it at Oshkosh for the 1998 air show, and there it won the Best Bomber Award. Well, we saw a single Hurricane at Sea Wings. Now we're going to see 3 of them. the weaving taxi of the tailwheel fighter. See, the pilot can't see much straight ahead, so he has to weave the thing from side to side so he can see where he's going. Now, these aircraft, in true style, take off on the grass, and look at that, the buttercups and the green grass. That's the epitome of the Battle of Britain airfield. That aircraft with 7L on it is actually a Sea Hurricane, not so very different from the other type, the ordinary Land Hurricane. And here's a lovely formation of 3 of them. Not so long ago you wouldn't have seen this, because there wouldn't have been that many flying. The thing about the Hurricane was it heralded a whole new era in RAF fighter design. And despite the fact that it actually flew before the biplane Gladiator, it was the first monoplane interceptor for the RAF, first combat aircraft to exceed 300 miles an hour in level flight, and the first 8-gun fighter, 4 machine guns in each of those wings. Sidney Cam was the man who designed it. That was in 1934, and the Hurricane is the descendant of the famous Fury and the Hart, and the forerunner of the equally famous Hawker Hunter and the Harrier. Bombers now, and the B-25 Mitchell. The Duke of Brabant's Air Force, this one comes from, another privately owned company, Netherlands colours, taking off from the runway. And the local fighter collection aircraft taking off from the grass. This one's in RAF colours, colours of 98 Squadron, around about D-Day in June 1944. There are the invasion black and white stripes. Slightly gull wing look to it, with the bomb bay doors open there. That gull wing came about because during flight tests the dihedral of the wing was altered so that the outer section of the wing was flat. Air-to-air view of the Duke of Brabant aircraft. Served with 11 different air arms in the Second World War, did this aircraft. And this one was built in 1944 and found after the war in Baton Rouge in a neglected state. She was bought in 1989 and taken to Eindhoven, where she was lovingly restored. B-25 has a maximum speed of 340 miles an hour, which is actually quite nippy for a bomber. But now it's finale time. This is what Flying Legends has become famous for, the Balbo, the big formation at the end of the day. More than 30 aircraft in the sky together, all led by Pete Kinsey, who we saw flying earlier in the Tiger Cat. Stacks of Mustangs. Here are the 2 Mitchells having taken part in that flypast coming into land. P-47 Thunderbolt, Hellcat and Wildcat, braking. Run in and brake is the classic manoeuvre for separating aircraft that have been in formation before they land.
Take it higher.
Now, mention air shows to most people in Britain and they automatically think of Farnborough. Happens every other year, and along with Paris, it's the most important aviation trade show in Europe. Surprisingly, it only has a couple of hours of flying each day, but it does go on for 7 days, with the last 2, the Saturday and Sunday, being open to the public. And true to form, the industry announced orders running into billions of dollars during the week. But the story everyone was talking about concerned an aircraft that won't even fly for another 4 years, the Airbus A3XX. We asked Philip Jarry of Airbus Industrie why they decided to go ahead with the development of such a revolutionary airliner.
It's about 10 years ago that the European industry investigated what could be done to serve the air transport market with a very large airplane. The market requirement was for a very economical airplane, very powerful airplane. It's a very productive airplane. The airlines were requesting an airplane so much more economical than the 747-400, which is the largest airplane flying today, that the market requirement was in excess of 500 seats. They want an airplane that flies fast, so we are flying in excess of Mach 0.85. They want an airplane which is very agile, so we climb faster, quicker to initial cruise altitude compared to 747. Because they want the airplane to be very agile in the congested air traffic areas. So basic requirement to have this airplane, although bigger than the 747-400, to fit with existing infrastructure, which means that the airplane has to take off and land using the same runways as the 747-400 of today. So for the airports, it's really to decide whether they feel it is better to have fewer airplanes taking a certain quantity of passengers, or a lot of airplanes arriving within minutes in any case, bring the same number of passengers. And the airport architects are telling us that they prefer to work on a larger airplane, maybe with 2 floors, 2 levels terminal buildings, which are more economical than single floor that you have to extend. The airline will have passed to you, the passenger, the lower operating cost of the airplane, which means that the ticket price, you will be pleasantly surprised to see further reduction in your airfares. The second thing is that you will not be among a very big crowd of people, because the double-decker, and it is a unique feature of the A3XX, will accommodate you and your fellow passengers into separate cabins. So there will be a 350-seater airplane flying with a 200-seater on the top. So it will not be mass transit, just 2 airplanes departing at the same time. And the first airlines to operate the A3XX should get their new double-decker airplane at the end of 2005.
But here now is the opposite end of the transport scale, the small transport C-27J Spartan. It's a joint development between Alenia of Italy and Lockheed Martin of the United States. As the company says, not every load is large, not every distance is long, and no country or military service wants to spend more than it needs to. So they've got together to build this remarkable new little airlifter. It's sort of half a Hercules, really, designed for mid-sized missions, mid-sized payloads, and mid-sized budgets. It has the same engines and propellers as the Hercules, although only 2 of them, same avionics, and it even accepts the same load pallets inside. And here's another aircraft that results from an international collaboration, the Fairchild Dornier 328. That's jointly built by Dornier of Germany and Fairchild of the United States. 30 to 34-seater. The company claims it's the fastest, roomiest and most efficient aircraft in its class. It's just received its certification, both in the United States and in Germany, and the first North American customer, Aspen Mountain Air, will get its aircraft shortly. Staying with short-haul and business aircraft, the Brazilian Embraer Trio were on next. It's a family of regional and business jets, and it's enabled the South American company to become a major player in the international marketplace. 400 aircraft already delivered, with an order book of 500 more. The 135 and the 145 were already airborne, and the The latest edition, the ERJ-140, takes off on the wet Farnborough runway. The company expects that up to 80% of its orders will come from the United States. But Farnborough is also about military aircraft, and making its debut at the show was the F-18F. That's the latest variant of the US Navy's trusty Hornet fighter. Navy pilot Lieutenant Zeno Rouser explains how the aircraft differs from the older C version.
This is an F-18F model, which is a two-seat version. Comes out in two different models, E and F. E is the single-seat version, F is the two-seat version. The particular aircraft we're looking at here is configured with a conventional load out there with some smart weapons that uses every sensors that the aircraft has. There's several big advantages it has over the sea. As far as just getting off the deck and the admin portion of the flight, it's very similar to the sea. The big differences you're going to see is there's a lot of advanced technology that's going to be equipped in the first Super Hornet that goes out on an operational tour. We've got more weapon stations. We also carry more expendables. We've double the expendable capacity, and we have 2 extra weapon stations on every wing. You've got a little bit more thrust available. Now you got to take in mind, if you're to look at the actual numbers, it's a little bit deceiving because the jet does actually weigh more. Weighs about 7,000 pounds more base weight than the Charlie Hornet. So you're going to need some more thrust to push the jet around. Pay particular note during the air show, just take a look at the Eurofighter and take a look at the F-16 as they do their shows and demonstrate their slow flight capabilities, and watch the angle between their fuselage and the ground as compared to the Hornets. We'll take this thing at 50 alpha and be completely controllable at 50 alpha. So you're going to see a significant advantage there. So hopefully that'll present itself in the air show.
Lieutenant Rouser suggested we look at the Eurofighter, and so we did. Eurofighter Typhoon has been a very long time in development. First prototype flew in 1994. There have been all sorts of political differences, but they've been largely overcome, and the pilots who fly it report themselves very happy. Deliveries to air forces of the United Kingdom, Germany, Spain and Italy will start in 2002. Highly sophisticated aeroplane. It even has a voice-activated control system. In fact, the pilots know it as nagging Nora. It's a female voice that tells them what to do. Somewhat reassuringly, though, you can only fire the aircraft's missiles with an old-fashioned trigger. Here's a fairly regular visitor to Farnborough. It's the Sukhoi Su-32 flanker. A very high level of crew comfort in this aircraft. The ejection seats give you a massage as you fly along, and there's even a lavatory and a little kitchen in the back of this aircraft for the 2-person crew. It's a long-range tactical bomber. It's being offered to buyers at the air show as a land-based naval fighter. It's a very versatile airplane, an extremely efficient fighting machine. Another aircraft at the show for the first time was the British version of the famous Boeing Apache attack helicopter. This one's built by GKN Westland. It's called the WAH-64, and it's got 2 Rolls-Royce RTM-322 turbine engines, and that's significantly more power than the GET-700s in the original Boeing. Aircraft number 7 had its first flight from the company's airfield in the west of England earlier this year. Apache Programme Director Martin Fawcett explains just what it will offer the British Army.
Well, this aircraft clearly is a formidable attack helicopter. The armament system consists of anti-tank missiles, 2 forms of anti-tank missiles, rocket system, and of course a chain gun. So it really is an enormously capable weapon system. Senior military officers have referred to this as being as significant as the introduction of the tank to the British Army. So it's considered by them to be an enormous leap in their operational capability. It's a tremendous experience working on a project like this. It's going very well. We've pretty much got ourselves on time and under budget, which is a good achievement at this point.
Finally, mighty Nimrod took to the air. Been outstandingly successful over the past 25 years, but it is becoming increasingly obsolete. 4 years ago, after stiff competition from all over the world, the government announced that the replacement for the Nimrod was to be another Nimrod, albeit still a four-jet, but 80% new systems. So Farnborough 2000 was a massive show with new orders placed and new aircraft announced.
Ticket higher.
We move on now to Somerset to celebrate the Diamond Jubilee of the Royal Naval Air Station at Yeovilton. And perhaps perversely, we'll start this naval show with the Army. In fact, the Blue Eagles helicopter display team. They arrive with one of them going backwards, that's the Lynx. The other aircraft are 4 Gazelles. Lynx demonstrating its extraordinary manoeuvrability. Gazelles, meanwhile, maintaining tight formation. Lynx pilot, Warrant Officer 1 Mark Curry. Been an instructor for some time. Flies this aeroplane like he needs it. It's all action, this Army show. And Lynx doing something there that helicopters really ought not to be able to do. And a good view of the anti-tank missile tubes on the side of the aircraft there. All good shows, it ends with a bow.
And so if you look to your right, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Royal Air Force aerobatic team of the new millennium, the Red Arrows.
Well, we had the Army first, now it's the Air Force. We will have some naval stuff shortly, I promise you. In the meantime, the Red Arrows are really here to entertain us. 9 Red Hawks, with that arrow insignia underneath each one, in their trademark Diamond 9 shape. And as they pull up in front of us, they're into another shape called Apollo, after the spaceship.
Having started the manoeuvre with the speed in excess of 400 miles per hour, the speed now reduces to only 150 miles per hour at the apex of manoeuvre, and attaining some 5,500 feet.
That's the voice of the commentator, Flight Lieutenant Russ Jones. And the team's led this year by Squadron Leader Andy Offer. And at 34, he's the youngest Red One there's ever been.
Jippo backs off and goes to your right, whereas Enid...
And there's the split between the two formations. This one is called Enid, after the famous 5, and the other formation is called Jippo, and they've never quite got round to explaining why they call it that, but they do.
They now turn towards each other for the 4-5 cross.
So these two formations are going to cross in front of us. Smoke in these displays is made by squirting diesel fuel into the hot jet exhaust.
There you are, Andy's ordered his 4-wing men down, and the inverted V is forming. But look to your left now, and you'll see Red 8 as he charges over 500 miles per hour to gust the formation approaching from your right.
And that Red 8 is Flight Lieutenant Andy Evans. now these amazing alternate rollbacks. Coming next is the most extraordinary brake. As the aircraft head towards us, the Jippo formation do the Jippo brake. Isn't that fantastic?
Drilling around 7 times before the Ladies and gentlemen, once again may I present the new Millennium Red Arrows.
So we've had the Army and we've had the Air Force. So why does the Navy need aeroplanes?
Right from the word go, what the Admiralty has wanted is something that will do the job of a ship better. And it's all very well to say that an aeroplane can see further over the horizon, but can it do it in bad weather? Can it do it at night? And what you see through the development of naval aviation, both in the United States and in Britain, is that as aircraft become capable, they've taken over the task.
Well, one such aircraft was the Sopwith triplane. First cleared to fly in 1916, it went straight to France in June of that year, First World War of course being at its height. It was reputedly sent to intercept enemy aircraft within 15 minutes of arrival. And it equipped the Royal Naval Air Service squadrons. Many victories scored by this interesting looking aeroplane.
As the Admiralty progressed and tried to get more aircraft to sea, of course there's a problem that if one aeroplane can only do one role, you need an awful lot of aircraft in a carrier. So the Admiralty attempted to reduce the number of aircraft you needed by allowing them to carry out more than one role. In some cases this worked. The Swordfish was technically the torpedo spotter reconnaissance type 2 aircraft, and it fulfilled all those 3 roles, and it did them very well. It was a very manoeuvrable, useful aircraft that carried a 1,700 pound torpedo or 1,500 pounds of bombs about 150 miles, and was handy landing back on the carrier at the other end, even in night or in bad weather.
Well, another naval fighter was the FM2 Wildcat, known in early British service as the Martlet. Now, this particular aircraft is actually in the markings of 846 Squadron of the Fleet Air Arm when it was embarked in HMS Tracker. Interesting airplane, designed and first flew in 1937, designed as a successor to Grumman's single-seat biplane carrier fighters between the wars. The US Navy decided not to have it, but the French Navy ordered it, and that order was redirected to Britain, and then the US Navy ordered them. 7,300 of these aircraft were built. The Navy actually bought it, our Royal Navy, because the Seafire, that was the navalised version of the Spitfire, wasn't actually rugged enough, so they decided this would be stronger and better, and so it proved. Now here's an elegant machine. Notice the white ensign on the side there. That means that this is, believe it or not, an admiral's barge. And what that means in naval terminology is that it was the personal transport of some frightfully important senior officer, like FONAC. I think that stands for Flag Officer Naval Air Command. You see it has VL on the tail fin. That means that it was based at Yeovilton. It is a Vampire T-11. It actually belongs to Source Aviation at Bournemouth. It's really an ex-Swiss Air Force aircraft, a T-55 that makes it, but it's been reconverted back to British standards and painted as the old admiral's barges were in those days. Of course, senior officers are not allowed to do that sort of thing anymore. Some might say, more's the pity. First flew in 1943, did the Vampire, but the first production fighter aircraft didn't arrive till April 45, too late for war service. Perhaps the most famous de Havilland twin-boom aircraft was the Sea Vixen, and Desmond Penrose was a de Havilland test pilot involved in its development.
Sea Vixen was an excellent aircraft to fly. You had twin-engine reliability, very good low-speed handling characteristics, a good aerobatic aircraft, And although it was not supposed to be spun in squadron service, I did spin it for test purposes.
Now, no Sea Vixen has flown for ages, but Gwyn Jones, who calls his company DH Aviation, has got one airborne again.
I swapped a fire engine for a Vampire, which we started to rebuild in one of our old barns, and we met some aircraft engineers and it progressed forward from there, and we eventually took the aircraft to Swansea, and we bought the company de Havilland and got approvals from the CAA and eventually created a flying aircraft out of it.
Former Luftwaffe pilot Sepp Pauli flew the Sea Vixen some years ago.
You need a few time in the cockpit before you are going flying after such a long time again, because it is you need to get climatized to within the cockpit, how the aircraft is performing, how the engine sound is going, you know, how the controls are feeling. Once you've got all those back into the feel again, this is when you are ready to fly then.
Desmond Penrose was the man who delivered the Sea Vixen to Yeovilton.
XP924, yes. That was in the early 60s, and if my memory is correct, I believe that was the first aircraft to be delivered to the Royal Navy.
And you delivered it?
Yes.
Can you remember where you delivered it to?
I fairly certain it must be in Royal Naval Air Station, Yeovilton.
And to anybody who likes old jets, this is a wow of a picture. Amazing contrast between the de Havilland Aviation Vampire on the far side and the big Sea Vixen. The wingspan, it was plus 1/3 on the Vampires. The length, it was plus 2/3, and it weighed 3 times as much. So let's hope we see this wonderful aeroplane on the airshow circuit in 2001. Well, right bang up to date, and the latest entry into Royal Naval Air Service is the Merlin helicopter, the EH-101. Designed and built by Augusta of Italy and GKN Westland Helicopters of the United Kingdom in a combination known as European Helicopter Industries. It's also a civil aircraft, a military-based land use and naval shipborne use, and that's what this version is. Westland claims no other helicopter meets these requirements. It's a big aircraft with 3 engines, 60 foot 5 inches rotor diameter. That's not far short of a cricket pitch. Armament, 4 homing torpedoes or depth charges. It's got a glass cockpit, can be flown by a single pilot. Blue Kestrel radar, navigation by ring laser gyros, inertial reference systems, GPS and Doppler and radar altimeters. Carries sonar on board. General crew, 1 pilot, 1 observer, 1 air crewman. This aircraft is the 23rd production Merlin Mark I, and it was delivered in June to number 700 Naval Air Squadron at the Naval Air Station at Culdrose in Cornwall. By mid-June 2000, 99 EH-101s had been ordered by Japan, Canada, the United Kingdom and Italy. They're being evaluated by operators in Europe, in the Far East, the Middle East and indeed in the Americas. Well, now here's the other end of the helicopter scale. Compared with the Merlin's 60-foot rotor diameter, this one is just tiddly, 32 foot 3 inches rotor diameter of the Wasp HAS-1. Sitting there with its little supermarket trolley wheels.
P531. A wheeled undercarriage rather than the skids.
And simulating landing on the deck of an aircraft, this is actually the trainer that Harrier aircraft use for practicing on the ski jump. That's the launching pad that they have on the front of aircraft carriers these days. In fact, we haven't seen a Wasp at an air display since 1987, so very welcome this little aircraft is. The Type first flew in 1958, when it was the pre-production Scout, and the Wasp itself flew in 1962, so quite an old aeroplane, but a successful one. Bought by Australia, Bahrain, Brazil, Jordan, New Zealand, Netherlands, South Africa, Uganda, as well, of course, as the Royal Navy and the British Army. But this is the finale of the show. This is the Commando Assault. But although this is a commando assault, it does illustrate the birth of the new Joint Helicopter Command, a tri-service organisation which arose out of the 1998 Strategic Defence Review. The aim is to bring together battlefield helicopters of all three services. In that picture, the Chinook is at the back and naval helicopters leaving the picture on the right. And there is a naval Harrier behind.
Take it higher, take it higher, take it higher.
Next, an unusual show from the home of Air Atlantique. And one of the stars of the show at Coventry was a very rare French aircraft, the Nord-Nord Atlas. Joël Paul Steff of the aircraft's restoration team told us about its history.
This aircraft is an aircraft that was built and designed by Nord Aviation, which was a French builder of aircraft that merged into Aerospatiale in the end of the 50s, beginning of the 60s. And this aircraft was the aircraft that replaced the Dakota and Junker 52 after the war as the transport military aircraft. It was designed on a requirement upon the French Air Force that required a military aircraft that was able to carry a lot of load and carry passengers, carry a wounded person, and also paratroopers. the aircraft was designed in the 40s and first flew in the beginning of the 50s. They were mainly in use in the French Air Force, the German Air Force Luftwaffe, and some of them were in use in the Portuguese Air Force, and some of them were also in use in the Israeli Air Force. This particular aircraft, number 105, was delivered to the French Air Force in 1954, and as soon as it was delivered, he went to a Suez crisis, and he was engaged in this crisis. It was engaged in some crisis also with the Israeli Air Force and with the Portuguese Air Force in Angola and Mozambique. The green nose she's got is coming from the tradition of a transport squadron of the French Air Force that was disbanded, that was named the Sahara Group. And this aircraft is having the color of that squadron because we just want to keep the tradition of all that squadrons and all those people that went through the operation of the French Air Force. So it is also a name of memory.
The show at Coventry is really dedicated to showing off working 1950s aeroplanes. Air Atlantique, who host the show, run a fleet of DC-6s, Convair 440s, and Lockheed Electros, and they do it very profitably. These old airliners continue to fly the world's air routes just as they did in the 1950s. And that's a decade that a lot of people might think was a golden time for civil aviation. They've also got something even older at Coventry, and that's the British Avro Anson. More than 11,000 of these RAF communication and training aircraft were built between 1936 and 1952. This aircraft is the only one still flying. Pilot Chris Bevan explains what it's like to fly the Annie.
It's an interesting aeroplane from the point of view that it's really old-fashioned technology. It's a 1935 airplane with 1930 engines. The engines aren't terribly powerful, so that the single engine performance is very, very poor. It wouldn't meet modern day requirements. The workload can be quite high at times. There's no automatic pilot, there's no automatics at all. It's very much a hands-on manual aeroplane, and if you get other tasks inflicted on you by air traffic control, the workload can get a little high. It's terribly limited from an operational point of view in a conflict like the Second World War. Limited in the amount of bombs it could carry, where you could put them. You couldn't put them anywhere. It had no weapons as such. So it really came into its own in the communications and the navigation role, but the biggest value of the Anson during the war was in the training sphere for multi-engined aircraft. It's partly old-fashioned engineering, partly the fact that it's a vintage aeroplane, partly nostalgia because I started what little flying I did do when I was a small boy on them, and it's a satisfying aeroplane to fly.
Now here's an amazing sight. A mass of DC-3s, Dakotas, C-47s, call them what you like. They're absolutely wonderful. Twin-engine transport aeroplanes. They're all working aircraft, a tribute to the durability and the versatility of this design that goes back as far as 1933. The sound of those big Pratt & Whitney radial engines as they fly over Coventry must have evoked memories of the aircraft's involvement in All sorts of heroic actions, the invasion of Sicily, the D-Day landings, and perhaps most famously of all, the Berlin airlift, and the entire population of the German capital depended on aircraft like the DC-3 for their very survival. Despite the age of these aircraft, looking at them, hearing them, is one of the most evocative experiences. But classic piston engines are not the only thing at Coventry. Vintage jets abound as well. We get the chance to trace the post-war development of the British jet fighter. And the first one flying is the very rare Gloucester Meteor F8. This was Britain's first jet fighter. It flew in 1943. It was the only Allied turbojet aircraft to see action in the Second World War. 616 Squadron was the one that took delivery of the first aircraft in July 1944. And on the 4th of August, a Meteor flown by Flying Officer Dixie Dean destroyed the first V-1 flying bomb. Dean had found that his guns were jammed, which was very common in the Meteor, but he used the jet's extra speed to get up alongside the flying bomb and using his wingtip to tip it off its course and put it into a spin. This is another Meteor type, the night fighter version, the NF-11, with the long nose with the radar in it. They all had Rolls-Royce engines in them. First off, the Welland engine, later the Derwent. Meteors lasted through till 1960 in RAF service, but it was a groundbreaking aeroplane, just as this one was. This is the magnificent Hawker Hunter, and it's maintained by Delta Jets at Kemble in Gloucestershire. It's flown for us today by Andy Cubin. Now, he's an ex-Red Arrow, and he was also the RAF's Jaguar display pilot.
This aircraft is superb to fly. It lies somewhere halfway between the Jaguar and the Hawk, but it really feels like a part of you when you strap it on. Its controls are very well harmonized, and it flies very well indeed. It is an old aeroplane. It's 50s vintage, but the engineering that it receives down at Delta Jets is quite superb. I mean, you can see the condition it's in behind me, and you could quite literally eat your dinner off it. It's very well maintained by our volunteer engineers who come down, every day, weekends, roll their sleeves up, get their hands dirty, and keep this wonderful airplane flying. I think it's vitally important to preserve the heritage of aviation. Aviation is just about to become 100 years old, and from the days when the Wright brothers got airborne off the beach in 1903 to present day, we've come an awful long way in the development of technology, and it's essential to preserve history. And these beautiful aeroplanes that enthusiasts like Delta Jets keep up in the air, and it's wonderful for people to be able to look back at history in real life, effectively.
Well, completing a trio of magnificent British jets, the Folland Gnat. This originally came about in the 1950s. It was a design of Teddy Petter. He wanted something like an easy-to-fly jet fighter, and it started out as the Midge. The RAF eventually agreed to buy it as a two-seat trainer, as former Gnat pilot Air Vice Marshal Boz Robinson recalls.
It was introduced into RAF service in the mid-60s as a lightweight, cheap-to-operate two-seat trainer. Development of the original fighter version, the Folland Midge, which was a one-seat fighter bought by the Indians and the Finns. I like this aircraft because I spent many years training pilots from the back seat of this aeroplane, and you develop a great affinity to an airplane. This is wonderful to handle, as fast and manoeuvrable and aerobatic as this one is. It's an absolutely marvelous training vehicle.
tended perhaps to be overcomplicated for some students in that the longitudinal control system is quite complicated. But it was a good training vehicle. Anybody who completed a course of training successfully on this aeroplane was definitely going to be a very good pilot. It's very hard not to enjoy flying this aeroplane because it's so maneuverable. It's like you're attached, it's part of your body. And whatever you do or think, the aeroplane will just follow you through. It's just wonderful.
The Gnat's engine is a Bristol Siddeley Orpheus that gives it a maximum speed of just over the speed of sound. It's the first aircraft to be flown by the Red Arrows, the aerobatic display team, and the paint scheme of this aircraft is of the Red Arrows.
I think it's absolutely essential that we preserve as much as we can of the past in whatever form. This is a particularly interesting item because it's a supersonic flying training jet. The first of its kind, the first in service in the Royal Air Force as a supersonic trainer, and it marks a particular path of progress in British aviation. It's absolutely vital that we keep as many of these aeroplanes as we can to enjoy well into the future.
Take it higher.
Now one of the biggest military air shows in the world, the humongous Royal International Air Tattoo. It's usually at Fairford, but they're tearing up the runway there, so it fell to Cottesmore in Rutland, the smallest county, to host this biggest show. The weather was wonderful in the days before the show, and terrible on the Saturday and Sunday, with low cloud and even lower temperatures. But some teams are not easily discouraged. Teams like the Biele Albatrossi, the White Albatrosses from Slovakia. They take off in 2 Vics of 3, 6 of them altogether. Elegant little aeroplanes these, the Albatross, the L-39, made by the company called Aero, which is based in Wallop in the Czech Republic. Nice line astern from the 6 aircraft there, but they're not far below the cloud base, and almost in and out of the bottoms of the cloud. Now we're flying with the leader, Colonel Ivan Choika. You can see the other aircraft on his wingtip. Smoke hardly visible against the grey skies, but nonetheless sufficient to delineate their path across the airfield. No vertical movements here because of the low cloud base, so it's quite impressive that they're actually getting airborne at all. So-called dirty fly past. It's with the wheels down, a kind of box 6 formation. First flew back in 1968. Did this little trainer, used for training throughout Eastern Europe. Now one of the things they do immaculately is to land in formation, these 6 aircraft. The back 3 land first, and then the front 3 are down in front of them, all under the command of Colonel Choika. Now something really hot and powerful, the MiG-29 of the Hungarian Air Force. Getting airborne and putting the reheat in those big Tumansky turbofans, 18,300 pounds of thrust from each of them. And in and out of the cloud. Pilot is Captain Peter Kovac. It's his first display season, but he did come last year. He spent some time flying around in the back seat of the aircraft during the displays. He was so good this year that he won the As the Crow Flies trophy at the tattoo. A menacing look from the front of the MiG-29 with those enormous intakes of the Tumansky engines. As he cuts his display short and comes in using the braking parachute to slow him down on the runway. Another MiG-29 from Eastern Europe, this one from the Polish Air Force. Pilot of this MiG is Major Stefan Rutkowski. He's a squadron commander in the 1st Fighter Regiment of the Polish Air Force. Flashes of condensation showing how much moisture there is in the air. Now one of the aircraft that in the days of the Cold War would have countered the MiG-29, the F-16 of 315 Squadron, the Royal Netherlands Air Force. The pilot is Captain Woods Bosch, and he will talk us through his display.
It's going to be a min-ready stern, about 210 knots, and trying to aim for the center point, which I'm looking at right now. 210 knots and about 3 Gs, 500 feet all the way. Do a reversal. Still in full afterburner, coming back around for the inverted pass, which will be at about 500 feet and 300 knots. Smoke will come on pretty soon now. Here it is. Going up to about 400 knots, and this is going to 9 Gs right now. All the way 360 degrees of turn and maintaining about 370 knots, which will give about a 22 degrees per second turn rate. Enter max rate turn, do a derry turn, level it out, smoke comes off, and we go to idle power, and the speed brakes come out, and take it hard left around for the slow speed pass at about 220 knots. Did it for about 90 degrees of turn, after which we'll land. There's also a 7G turn in idle power with speed brakes out. Gear comes down. Just telling the tower here that my gear is down and I'm coming in to land. Trying to aim to stop at the show center point, so I'll touch down about 4,000 feet down the runway. At touchdown I'll use the drag chute and also full brakes to be stopped in about 1,000 feet. And you see the 4,000 feet of runway passing underneath me, touchdown about now, reaching for the drag chute switch, it's coming out, and full brakes. And that concludes the show.
Captain Woods Bosch of the Netherlands Air Force and the F-16. It goes slightly quieter now with the transport aircraft, the Antonov AN-72, the first jet-powered transport produced by Antonov. Ukrainian aircraft this, those big Lotarov engines on the top of the wing. Ukraina, it says on the side there in Cyrillic script. Now an earlier Antonov aircraft, this is actually the AN-14, but it's in use by the Polish Navy. This is a maritime patrol version of the AN-14. Got turboprop engines and the big radome underneath the flight deck there. It's the M28 Brisa. Another hot fighter, this time from France, in the capable hands of Commandant Alain Personnat. And this is the Mirage 2000 from Escadron de Chasse 25 at Orange in the south of France. Alain Personnat talks us through his display.
3, 4, and then 270 degrees by the right to come back facing the center point. The setting is very low at this moment. You can guess the white of the clouds on the left and the top. The airfield is to the right. Now I'm facing the center point. Roll to the left and turn to the left. Stop, left roll. A little climb and another dumble. Roll to the right and turn to the left. This gave me the opportunity to come back to the center point at 45 degrees angle. Roll to the left and turn to the right. I stop the turn and roll to the right. I'm on the axis, a little dumble to the right. You see, I'm just about in the cloud. At the moment I'm 120 knots, taking the axis, and now I'm reaching about 100 knots. And facing the center point, you can guess here, I will be around 90 knots. Then I will apply full power again. Full power with a green light. And then turn back to the left with the roll. A little climb and dumble left to right again. A little pass of inverted flight. Another roll that will stop inverted. Come back to normal flight. And a sharp right turn and left. Normally I should have done a kind of barrel roll, but it was impossible to do that today at this place. The clouds were too low.
Alain Personnat of the French Air Force with a determined display under difficult conditions.
Take it higher.
Now here's a contrast. From thunderous jets into garden party civilization. This is Woburn Abbey and the gentle peregrinations of the de Havilland Moth Club. Their president is Stuart Mackay.
It's very special because this is a very special place. There's history here, not only from the Flying Duchess before the war, but the site was used as an RAF-MU during the war. And little ATA girls flew in huge four-engine bombers, huge for those days, either to be modified or broken up. And it's just an amazing place in the middle of England, which doesn't have the label that it should have attached to it. And it's a natural amphitheatre for watching our kind of aeroplanes on the lawn. I think Geoffrey de Havilland would have approved, yes. His aeroplanes that he designed in 1925, the first Moth, we've got a whole collection here. We've got the oldest Moth in the world, GEBLV, was built in 1925, and it was delivered to the Lancashire Aero Club at Woodford Aerodrome in Manchester. It's still owned today by BAE Systems, who keep it in airworthy condition. It's managed for them by the Shuttleworth Trusted Old Warden, and it's with us today, and it really is the oldest one flying in the whole world, flying part of the display. The display today is a celebration of 75 years of the DH-60 Moth, so that aeroplane is 75 years old today. The company is 80 years old in a month's time. The Moth Club is 25 years old, and this is our 21st Woburn Rally, so it's quite a celebration today.
And what a way to celebrate. A lovely place to do it in. Just enough cloud to make the aeroplane stand out against the background. Open air flying at its very best. There are actually 10 different Moth types flying here today. And looking at these, you might notice the pilot doesn't have much of a view ahead because the engine has sort of lumps on the top. Those are actually the cylinders of the engine. It's a 4-cylinder inline engine, and like a car engine, they're on top. So with a view to trying to make the pilot able to see in front more easily, they eventually decided they should have the engines upside down. Later versions of the engine had the cylinders underneath. And also, that little lump in the middle of the wing there on top is the fuel tank, so that's pretty close to the pilot's head. So you don't really want to be turning the thing upside down on the ground if you could avoid it. The wings braced with those wires, supported by struts. You can see the fuel pipe leading down from that tank to the engine. Side-slipping in, close the throttle and let it drift down onto the ground. Isn't that lovely? No brakes on these aircraft, so no ability to steer by differentially braking the wheels. You just have to steer by using the rudder and the airflow. No tail wheel either, just a little skid, which means that you really have to land these on grass. You can't land them on concrete. Now look at this. This is what they call the limbo. Now that's a tiger moth, and you'll see that engine there has been turned upside down. The pilot can see rather better ahead, which is a good thing if he wants to fly under a set of flags like that. Under one set, above the next. Quite amazing. And this is the chipmunk. This is crazy flying. That's what it's actually called. Now they're doing something that looks even crazier. They're trying to pop these balloons with their aeroplanes. Nope, missed that time. Oh, got that one. And another. Oh no. There's one gone. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, so what's a 4-engined aeroplane doing at the Moth Club? Well, this is a de Havilland aeroplane. It's the de Havilland Heron, and it's powered by 4 of the Gypsy Queens that power the Tiger Moths. It's basically a scaled-up version of the de Havilland Dove, which was a 2-engined aeroplane. They just made it a bit bigger and put 4 engines in. Now, isn't that an elegant little airliner? Fixed pitch propellers, just 2 blades. An ex-Jersey Airlines aeroplane, this. Isn't that a smashing sound? Bought by the Ministry of Defence to be an admiral's barge for the Navy, and then they sold all of them off after they decided that admirals shouldn't have airborne barges. A group of ex-Jersey Airlines folks bought this particular aeroplane, and it's flown today by Captain Freddie Clarkson. They can carry 19 passengers in this. They do nice things like little cross-channel trips to Lutuke and exciting things like that. Very 1930s. Now I think we can see Freddie Clarkson do one last fast pass. Now isn't this beautiful? This is a predecessor of the Heron, the de Havilland Dragon. And Eola on the nose is the Gaelic for eagle. This is an ex-Aer Lingus aeroplane. It's actually spent quite a few years of its life hanging in the Dublin airport. It's now operated by ex-Aer Lingus people. It's probably the only one flying in Europe, although another one is on its way back from Australia. And there's a wonderful view of Woburn Abbey. Now these people walking round in circles are the Diamond 9 formation team. They're practicing their formation by walking through it on the ground. They've been doing this for 14 years. They're a very popular group of people.
Okay, chocks in.
Thank you.
Switches off.
You're running.
Thanks.
Fuel's on and throttle closed.
Throttle is closed. Ready to prime, suck in 4, blow 10.
Each of these aeroplanes is individually and privately owned, but they've been getting together these 14 years to fly a unique formation, a 9-ship civilian formation. Tiger Moth is not a particularly easy aircraft to fly in formation because being very light and with a low wing loading, it's quite sensitive to gusts and bumps, so it's very difficult to hold it steady against another aeroplane. Before they do their formation proper, they're going to drop some parachutists. Olympus Diamond 9 parachutists jumping out of their Tiger Moths. 5 parachutists, they just climb onto the trailing edge of the wing and leap off. Fly these parachutes on the way down, pulling down on the handles there to flare out just before they get down to the ground, and with a bit of luck, not fall over when they do come down. Oh, very neat. Isn't that nice? Just one more to get down. But now all 9 are in their proper formation. And look how steady they are. Should make the most of this site, because it's not going to happen again after this year. More about that in a moment. The rumbling roar of 9 Gypsy Queen engines. And the beautiful, delicate shape of the 1930s trainer that became so popular all over the world. Now as they come towards us in feathered arrow, Fred they call this formation, watch for the break. Well, after 14 years, they've had enough. Their ages total 522 years, that's an average of 58 each. And they're quitting while they're ahead. Sad, but sensible. So, thank you to the Diamond Nine for the years of pleasure they've given us.
Take it higher, take it higher, take it higher.
Well, we've seen some helicopters so far, but nothing like this, because this is Europe's largest helicopter air show at the Army Air Corps Centre at Middle Wallop. And Middle Wallop has become famous for its massed helicopter approach, lurking in the fields on the far side of the airfield, but we can see them, but the people watching the show can't see these at the moment, but they will do very soon. It's very dramatic. The lynx, the gazelle, and the aerospatiale écureuil, the squirrel. And we have liftoff. Advancing across the field towards the crowds. The noise is fantastic. They used to have 100 helicopters involved in this. These days it's rather less, but it's still very impressive. The wing of an Oscar of the Army Air Corps Historic Flight. And the flag flypast from the Army Air Corps Historics. The Sioux leading, the Scout on its right, and the Alouette on its left. And this is the moment for the Army's newest helicopter, the Apache, to make its grand entrance. The British-built WAH-64 Apache that we saw earlier at Farnborough. Now, having got them all there, you then have to unpick the whole thing. Very complicated business, a lot of discipline required. There's the new Battlefield Lynx. And the RAF Chinook helicopter. Doing something rather special. Because not only is this a flying display, there's also music involved. And what better way to bring the music to the show than in a big helicopter. The band of the Army Air Corps, hatless, as seems only sensible in the downwash from those enormous rotor blades of the Chinook. The Apache still hovering behind, fairly drafty just there, I'd say. But now they've got their hats and they're ready to play. Now a fairly unusual beast for Middle Wallop. This is a Super Frelon, French helicopter, part of the Italian forces. Another very big helicopter, this.
Into the air as well. We'll see it in the paradrop roll.
Roughly the same size as the Merlin that we saw being introduced at Yeovilton earlier. A 62-foot rotor diameter, not far short of the size of a cricket pitch. And also a 3-engined aircraft, this, with 3 turbomecha turboshafts producing 1,630 horsepower each. Big 6-bladed rotor. First flew in 1962. Designed using technology from Sikorsky and from Fiat. Now a small demonstration of hoisting survivors, power winching. There he is, hoisted straight into the door without even having to sit down. The door's quite big enough for him to get in standing up. Used by the South African Air Force, by the Israelis, by China, Iran and Libya, as well as the French and the Italians. Well, now here's a surprise at this little grass airfield, a Boeing 767 airliner.
So the fact that the undercarriage is down, I think, is to slow it rather than to land it.
Undoubtedly the biggest aircraft you'll see here this weekend. Oh, and the pilot entering into the display routine.
Well, another little transport aeroplane diving onto the scene. This is the Miles Messenger, easily recognisable because of its 3 tail fins and its rather stalky little undercarriage.
It's got a Blackburn Series Major 155 horsepower engine. It's got a top speed of about 135 miles an hour.
Light transport aircraft during the Second World War for VIP people. First flew in September 1942. The RAF had 21 of them. But it got particularly famous because the third aircraft that was built was actually used by Monty. So this is Monty's Messenger, Field Marshal Montgomery, and he used it after D-Day to fly across the Channel. It was painted with these black and white invasion stripes, so it was less likely to be shot down by our aircraft. The pilot, Flight Lieutenant Trevor Martin, had been worried about cross-channel flight, but his fears were allayed when he saw the supply ships all the way across the Channel, and this was 6 days after D-Day, making floating stepping stones towards France and the landing beaches. Huge flap area enabling the aircraft to fly at very low speeds, low as 45 miles an hour.
Take it higher,
We'll end our review of British Millennium Airshows back at Duxford. There in September, they held a unique show to celebrate the 60th anniversary year of the Battle of Britain. And naturally, we'll start with Spitfires and Hurricanes. This is Rod Dean, who's going to lead the whole big formation at the end of the show. Merlin engines galore, and some Griffons as well. The Hurricanes start their takeoff run. Then you'll see their wheels retract inwards, and that means that they're quite wide-tracked, which makes them reasonably stable on these rough grass airfields when they're taxiing. Little vortex of dust.
Take off your discretion, wind 200, cutting 210, 5 knots.
Spitfires take off now. Their wheels retract outwards. And that means that they're set quite close together, almost under the fuselage. Which meant that the Spitfire was actually quite difficult to handle on the ground sometimes. Three Hurricanes in formation. Now here come the Spitfires. Where with Rod Dean in his cockpit you can see the two aircraft on either side behind him. As the speed builds up, he's pulling back on the stick. They're climbing and turning. Now pulling up into the vertical as they go over the M11 motorway. He's looking back for the horizon. There's the ground underneath and he rolls off the top. He makes it look so easy. And finally, the Hurricane and the Spitfire together. The aircraft that won the Battle of Britain. But bombers were also important in the Second World War. This is one of two B-17s flying this side of the Atlantic. This one is based at Duxford. Andy Dixon on the left, David Grace on the right, the engineer Peter Brown, taking off in Sally B. American wing over Duxford, as they were in 1943. As the B-17 flies over, a Mustang takes off, soon to be followed by another, and soon she's escorted by two little friends. This is how the Americans protected their daylight bombing raids. The Mustangs used to go all the way with them to Berlin. Another Battle of Britain aircraft, the Blenheim. It was one of the bombers that used to fly to Germany and take on the enemy whilst the Battle of Britain was raging, but it was also a night fighter. So it's doubly qualified to play a part in a Battle of Britain celebration. It's wonderfully restored Blenheim, put back into this amazingly beautiful condition by the Aircraft Restoration Company at Duxford, and flown by one of the men responsible, John Romaine. Blenheim was one of the aircraft that was made in the days when the aircraft manufacturer made the engines. These are Bristol Mercury engines powering the Bristol Blenheim. But now it's finale time. There's a big Griffon engine starting up. They're setting out to break the post-war record of the maximum number of Spitfires in the air at the same time. Southampton managed to get 14. Well, that was 13 and 1 Hurricane. Let's see what Duxford can do on this occasion. That JEJ are the squadron markings of the famous Battle of Britain and General World War II ace Johnny Johnson. And there's a magnificent sight of mostly Griffon engine Spitfires. Mark 19s. And this is a Mark II. This is the oldest flying Spitfire in the world, and it's a genuine Battle of Britain veteran. Belongs to the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. And all of these aircraft are from the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. A swan of Spitfires. They're entertaining the crowd while the big formation winds up to fly overhead the crowd from behind. A special dispensation. They were allowed to do that because they were going to fly at 1,200 feet. And here's Rod Dean again in the lead, getting his men together. And one woman involved, Carolyn Grace, in one of the Spitfires, and there they are, 19 of them over the top, including 3 Hurricanes. 6 Vics of 3 aircraft, plus 1 Weaver weaving around at the back, the tail end Charlie, who was looking out for the enemy aircraft approaching from behind. A magnificent, record-breaking formation. So if you include the 5 Battle of Britain Memorial flight aircraft airborne at the same time, but not in the big formation, that's 24 aircraft altogether, a quite extraordinary achievement. And a magnificent site on which to end our coverage of the Millennium Airshows in Britain.